So we are in presentation number 56 today of the two witnesses, and we are cruising through Babylon part 22 today. And today I'm going to focus on this verse, Jeremiah 51, verse 27. There's an interesting phraseology called God calls all the nations together to be raised up and to be prepared. And he wants to put a captain over these nations that he calls to attack Babylon and to defeat it and to decimate it. So God is raising armies from nations to judge Babylon. Now, here he mentions three nations. Those are Ararat, Mini, and Ashkenaz. There are three nations that are included in the list. And the next verse tells the Medes are actually called to do the job. And Net Bible gives us additional insight that these three kingdoms were part of Medo-Persian Empire. To be precise, Medes. They conquered these three kingdoms long back, and so they're part of Medo-Persian Empire, and they are automatically part of the judgment on Babylon. And God calls not only Medo-Persians, but all the other countries that are associated or subjugated or vassal states of Medo-Persian Empire to come and decimate the physical Babylon. But that is a shadow, that's a picture. And the reality is spiritual Medo-Persian Empire would be raised, and they would come and decimate spiritual Babylon, and spiritual Euphrates would be dried up. And today, one of you asked me last time and a couple of weeks ago, want to hear and learn more about Ashkenaz. We have divided opinions among Christians in this country as well as across the world. For some, Ashkenaz is just another word in Bible. For some, they never heard of Ashkenaz. And it is just a strange new word. So it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't tell anything to them. It's just one of those foreign words. But for some Christians, it sounds an alarm in their ears. Yet some other Christians, it sends chills down their spine, depending on how much you are familiar with this Ashkenaz. So this is a word, this is a phrase. It's felt differently across different Christians, and I adopt the policy of on demand. So sometime back, Rita asked for 144,000. So I'm preparing a couple of presentations on 144,000. So one of you asked for a couple of weeks ago for Ashkenaz. And so I'm going to today spend some time, throw light on the Ashkenaz so that we get familiar with this word and who are Ashkenaz. So that's the topic today. And we'll spend brief time in Jeremiah 51 and explore Ashkenaz. And then I will segue to outside of Bible to secular research. And we would be consulting two research documents and try to educate ourselves of what these researchers are bringing to us. And before we begin this study, I want to make a statement. that myself and everybody in this Zoom room, we are not anti Semitic. We are not anti Semitic. We are not anti Jews. And we don't hate or work against any group of people, either racial basis or ethnic basis. We don't support violence against any community, and we don't instigate violence or discrimination or hate. Uh, so we are certainly not anti Semitic. And at the same time, we are also not anti Palestinian either. So we don't hate Palestinians, we don't hate Jews. But the subject has sensitivity because some people might view the content of the secular research as anti-Semitic, but that is not. The authors that wrote this research material actually tell us that they never intended this material to be anti-Semitic, but this is an honest academic research. So I would be sharing that. And again, the policy is take it or leave it. And any secular research, people present a case based on their research. So it's up to us to consider facts and the case. And after doing our own homework, our own study, you may accept or reject the conclusions of their research. So take it or leave it policy uh, of the Ashkenaz. And the subject is about Israel and Jews in Middle East. So it's talking about who the Jews are and where they came from. So that's the subject. That's the touchy subject for some, and and we will segue into that. So let me start with Jeremiah 51 first and launch to the our key verse. Jeremiah 51, Jeremiah 51, verse 27. So we'll go there. We'll start with from 25. Behold, I am against you, O destroying mountain. This destroying mountain is Babylon, and God is saying that I am against you, O destroying mountain, said the Lord, which destroys all the earth, because this destroying mountain is actually destroying all the earth. And I will stretch out my hand upon you and roll you down from the rocks, and I will make you a burnt mountain. So, this is judgment from Almighty God. A judgment from heaven is coming down on this Babylon, this spiritual Babylon. In the shadow, this is earthly Babylonian kingdom, but in reality, it's a spiritual Babylon. Now, the part of the judgment when God is calling out, raising up armies against this nation, and they shall not take of you a stone for a corner, nor a stone for foundations, but you shall be desolate forever, said the Lord. So this the judgment already God is declaring against Babylon that you would be desolate place. Verse 27 is the verse of interest for us. Set you all up a standard in the land. Blow the trumpet among the nations. We talked about trumpets last time. Prepare the nations against her. Here is the key words that we would be focusing. Call together against her, the Babylon, the kingdoms of Ararat, Mini, and Ashkenaz. Appoint a captain against her, cause the horses to come up as rough caterpillars. So they would be swarming the whole Babylon like caterpillars, innumerable, uncountable, massive armies would come and surround, and Babylon would fall. So he's mentioned kingdom of Ararat, Mini, and Ashkenaz. It's very important, very interesting. But what is Ashkenaz? Why people get chills down their spine? Some Christians and others have no opinion, no clue, or no knowledge, or no awareness of Ashkenaz. So we have diverse groups of Christians, but we have to educate sometimes what's happening among the Christians in America, in US, and some Christians, especially independent researchers, uh, they seem to have a different understanding of Ashkenaz, that word. So we will segue into that. So we will just first find what the Ashkenaz is. Why focusing on Ashkenaz? Why not Ararat and Mini? There's a reason for that. Now, Net Bible tells us why these three kingdoms are mentioned. Ararat, Mini, and Ashkenaz are three kingdoms who were located in the Lake Van, Lake Urmia region, which are now parts of eastern Turkey and northwestern Iran. They were kingdoms which have been conquered and made vassal states by the Medes in the early 6th century BC. The Medes were the dominant country in this region from around 590 BC until they were conquered and incorporated into the Persian Empire by Cyrus in 550 BC. So we are talking about BC, before Christ, about 5 to 600 years before Christ. These three kingdoms were conquered and assimilated or made vassal states of Medo-Persian Empire. This is what Net Bible tells us. This is largely northwestern Iran and eastern Turkey, and this is where these three kingdoms are. But I found interesting thing, the Septuagint, the Greek translation that occurred around 200, 300 BC, uh, that skips Ararat and Mini. We see only Ashkenaz. So either Ararat and Mini was inserted by Masoretes, or that was dropped by Septuagint. Let me read the Septuagint, what it says. Septuagint, this is LXE Septuagint, Jeremiah 51, verse 27. Lift up a standard in the land, sound the trumpet among the nations, consecrate the nations against her, raise up kings against her by me, that for the people of Ashkenaz set against her engines of war, build up against her horses, bring up against her horses as a multitude of locusts. So you have only Ashkenaz, Ararat, and Mini are dropped. Isn't it interesting? Is there an effort to reduce the focus on Ashkenaz and and dilute the attention on Ashkenaz? That is the question raised and asked. Why they added two more kingdoms by Masoretes? So that's a side topic, but here is Ashkenaz mentioned. After all, what is Ashkenaz? Who are these people, Ashkenaz? And Genesis 10, verse 10, this is Table of Nations. Here we see, now these are the generations of sons of Noah. This is after flood. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth are Gomer and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshech, and Tiras. And sons of Gomer, here you can see Gomer is son of Japheth. Sons of Gomer are Ashkenaz, and Riphat, and Togarma. So Ashkenaz is son of Japheth, who is son of Noah. That's the connection. This is a group of people that descended from Ashkenaz. He's a direct descendant of Noah, Japheth. So that's what we learned from Ashkenaz. Chronicles also mention First Chronicles 1, chapter 1, verse 5. The sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog and Madai and Javan and Tubal and Meshach and Tiras. And sons of Gomer are Ashkenaz, Riphat, and Togarma. So again, this pretty much same information. Ashkenaz is son of Gomer. So they are Japhethites, and Japhethites lived near Caucasus Mountains. Lived near Caucasus Mountains. Why the I don't know how many of you heard about Khazars or Khazaria. This is the research we are segueing into the secular research. So now we are stepping outside of Bible. So this is not Bible. Okay. So so there is an independent research about an empire called Khazaria in 8th century AD, after death of Christ, AD. This Khazaria empire existed on the north of Caucasus Mountains. Caucasus Mountains. And this Khazaria was dissolved and conquered by other countries, and the Khazarians moved from that area into the Eastern Europe. And from Eastern Europe, they moved to Western Europe over hundreds of years. And they settled, then they moved to United States and Britain, and then they moved to Israel. That is the track of the Jews. So that's the document research, and this is kind of accepted by independent researchers, Bible students in United States, but the majority of Christians either not aware or dismiss the story, or at least I'm hoping you have heard about uh, Khazaria and Ashkenazi Jews as a concept. Some of you might have heard about that. You are not quite sure what what it talks about. So I want to take time and present this, what Ashkenazi Jews are and what Khazaria Empire is, and what is the connection. And we are talking about the racial stock of the people who are currently Jews in Israel. So that's where we are going. So this is McClintock and Strong. This is an independent uh, commentary, and I searched for Khazars. Khazars is name of a Finnish people, a Finnish people. It's not the Finnish people. That's stock of Finland, a rude but powerful nation north of Caucasus, related to Bulgarians and Hungarians. So this is Europe. We are talking about Europe, which in the 8th century embraced Judaism. So the king decided uh, to become Jews by adopting Judaism as their official national religion. This happened in 8th century, according to McClintock and Strong. After the dissolution of the empire of the Huns, they settled on the borders of Europe and Asia, and at one time possessed a realm near the mouth of Volga River. Usually we use V for Volga River, on the Caspian Sea after them, sometimes called Khazar Sea. So I will come here. The Byzantine emperors trembled. So this is part of Eastern Roman Empire that is called Byzantine emperors. They trembled before the warlike skill of Khazars. So Khazars are very militant people, this nation, and they are warrior people, and they are ruthless. And Roman Empire paid large tributes to keep them at a respectful distance from Constantinople. This is capital of Eastern Roman Empire. The Bulgarians and other people were their vassals, and the Russians appeased their desire for conquest by an annual tribute. So they paid tribute to the Khazars. And with Arabs, they were waging constant war. By degrees, as they abandoned their nomadic habits, their warlike spirit decreased. They largely fostered commercial intercourse into the outer world. So they became a little bit more civilized, and they are ruthless. And everybody was afraid of making war or fighting against Khazarians. And Khazarians are known for their cruelty. Sometimes we talk about them in historical documents. They will, if enemy is caught, they will take the enemy and skin him live. And sometimes they rip open his chest and take the heart out and squeeze the blood and drink it. So these kind of cruel things would terrorize their enemies, and everybody was afraid to fight these people. And this was the scenario according to McClintock and Strong. And Arabs, when they came into existence as Muslims after death of their caliph, the caliphate expansion started, and they want to convert the whole world into Islamic faith. And they were equally ferocious, Arabs, and everybody were afraid. There are hordes of militant Islamic uh, armies would march across the whole world and terrorizing the nations. And their slogan was, when Muslim Arabs went to different parts of the world, Islam or death. That was the slogan. Either you take up Islam and become Muslims, or we're going to kill you. So they are furious people, and they were fanatics, and they want to spread Islam by hook or crook, by violence or with appeasement. So those were the times. Then you have the Islam is in great spread, and while Christianity has come to a kind of saturation, but still it's a formidable force. And you have Islam and Christians. And Islam has started with Arabia, Saudi Arabia, Muhammad, and then they progressively went to Iran and other Syria and other portions of the Middle East, and they were successful in converting people to Islam. And they came and hit the Caucasus Mountains, and around on the other side of the Caucasus Mountains are Khazars or Khazars, whichever way you want to pronounce. That is Khazarian kingdom. And the Khazarian kingdoms, they expanded until they came in contact with Khazarian kingdom and Khazars or Khazars. There's a full stop for the further expansion, because they are more fierce than Islamic fighters. They are more terror to Islam and Muslims and Arabs than any other force in the entire world. So they stopped there. They fought for several centuries, did not make an ounce of progress. They did not gain an inch of the land. So that actually prevented their expansion into Eastern Europe and eventually Western Europe. If there were no Khazars, nobody is there to stop Arabs, we would have seen a different Europe today, mostly Islamic. But the Khazars are the formidable force that stopped. But the Khazars also in 8th century, they were idolatrous pagans. They were very cruel, but they have their own gods and they're very superstitious. And their king decided uh, to have a religion, official religion, because everybody thinks that we are savage people. So he thinks that he is not savage. His people are not savage. So he decided to take one of the religions. So the top contenders for him are Christian, Roman Christian, or the Islam. And there are two choices, the major players around that. A smaller player is Judaism. So there are Jews spread across by this, it's 8th century or 7th century. So by this time, 70 AD has already happened. Roman armies have decimated Jerusalem and Judea. Whichever Jews are left, they scattered across, and they are like smaller pockets. They work for kings and the emperors in Roman Empire. So they were small people, but nowhere nearer to Christians or Islam. They're microscopic minority. And the king asked a help, right? Send me a delegation. Try to convince me what is good about your religion. So the Christians supposedly sent a delegation to the king of Khazaria, and they gave a presentation that how good the Christianity is, and you would have lots of benefits. And King gave a good, respectful hearing, and he asked for Islam. So Arabs, Muslims also sent their delegation, and they also gave their presentation why they should all embrace Islam. And it seems there was a Jewish uh, counselor with the king, and he would somehow convince the king that Judaism is a better option. So he also asked Judaisms or Jews to send a delegation. So they come and tell them what their religion is, how he can embrace. Then king found out that this Judaism is a common denominator for both Christians as well as Islam. And he asked the Islamic delegation, what do you think about the Moses and this Genesis? Said like that is truth. And he also asked the Christian delegation, what do you think about this? Moses and the uh, the Genesis, all these books. They said that is truth. So both parties agreed. So now he made a good decision not to become, uh, not to embrace Christianity, become subject to Roman Empire, or not to become take up Islam and subject to the Islamic Caliphate, so that he become vassal state. So he chose Judaism, and then everybody in his country slowly absorbed Judaism. So they got the instructions, they got the scriptures, whatever that available to them. So they became Jews, official Jews. This is very interesting. Uh, so I want to take you on a journey on this very fascinating research document. This is called 13th Tribe. You can see 13th Tribe. This is by Arthur Koestler. Arthur Koestler was born in 1905, and he made this very controversial but very fascinating. People who hate this book, they hate, and who embrace this book, they embrace. But we don't join blindly either party. We will, we would, I would like you to give a good hearing to what this person does. He goes through several historical documents, and The evidence that he collects is very fragmented. He gets a hint here, he gets another archive and another place and another place. He did it for several years, and over the fragments he collected and tried to make a sense of what he found, and he wrote this book, 30th Tribe. So here you see the review of the book. What happens to anti-Semitism if this is the back cover of the book? What I showed is this is the front cover of the book, and I have this book in PDF form. If you want, I can share that with you. And this is lots of pages, lots of things. I will be reading to you extract, but this is the back page of the book, and this is some of the commentaries by Newsweek. The book by world famous author Arthur Koestler represents the culmination of the most astounding feat of historical detective work of our time. It was more like a detective, historical detective work of our time. In bold, brilliant, enthralling fashion, it proves that the true ancestors of Western Jewry, Jews, were not Semites, but rather a warrior empire of the Khazars, a mighty power that converted to Judaism in the Dark Ages, and whose subsequent exodus gave birth to the mainstream of the Jewish people as they now exist. This is a book of the monumental importance, combining the rich romance and adventure of history, the suspense of a search through heretofore uncharted knowledge, and above all, a revelation that profoundly affects both the way that the others look at Jews and the way Jews look at themselves. That is clear and convincing. That's what Newsweek comments. And as readable as it is, through thought-provoking, nothing could be more stimulating than the skill, elegance, and erudition with which Arthur Koestler marshals his facts. New York Times Book Review. Book review. So this is the thing. I will take excerpts from this book because this would affect the way we approach Jews and Israel. This is the map that Arthur Koestler gave in his book. This is a very ancient map, 1900s. You can see, I want you to notice two seas here. This is the Black Sea. This is the Black Sea, and this is Caspian Sea. So this portion is Caspian Sea, and this is Black Sea. Between these two seas is Caucasus Mountains. This is Caucasus Mountains. And on this side, north side of Caucasus Mountains, you can see Khazaria. I just underlined this, Khazaria. This is the empire or kingdom of Khazaria. So the Khazars lived here, and the Arabs are coming from bottom. You see the Persia and all these guys are here, Arabia, and they are coming here, and they were successfully able to convert and hit this point. And from here, they can go to Eastern Europe. You can see Bulgaria and Poland and all the countries of the Eastern Europe. And then eventually they want to convert Western Europe also. But they were stopped here by Khazaria. This is 8th century map. So this is interesting, fascinating. The Caucasus Mountains would give you a modern map, kind of not very modern. This is Medo-Persian Empire, the below, and this is Babylon. So God is asking Medo-Persian Empire to come and destroy Babylon in Jeremiah 51. And by that time, Medo-Persia already occupied Khazars. But you can see here the Black Sea and Caspian Sea. And here are the Caucasus Mountains. And north of Caucasus Mountains are Khazaria. So Khazaria is same another word for Ashkenaz. Ashkenaz and Khazaria are same. So the Ashkenaz is a vassal state of Medo-Persia. And when God wants Medo-Persians to judge Babylon, he includes Ashkenaz, which are other side of the Caucasus Mountains. This map is before Christ, 500 years before Christ. But if you come to the modern map, we find this Black Sea and then Caspian Sea, same region. And you have Greater Caucasus Mountains. This is a mountain region. And north of it, somewhere Khazaria used to be, like long time ago. And here, present day, this is Russia. And south of Caucasus Mountains is Georgia. And then this is a smaller mountain range called Lesser Caucasus Mountains. And then you have Iran, already Islamic. And then you have Turkey, semi-Islamic. And you have all these regions, see, like Islam conquered. Azerbaijan, this name itself is very Islamic. So up to this Caucasus Mountains, and north of it, you don't see any Islamic. And if you go towards left, you see the Eastern Europe. You see Bulgaria, Poland, all the Eastern European countries. So all of them stayed as Christian. So the Khazars north of Caucasus Mountains are the Czech for Islamic expansion. So that forever turned the landscape of Europe from becoming Islamic. Isn't it interesting? We're also learning a little bit history. Another map, more modern map. So you have Russia here. Maybe we can say present today's map. This is all Russia, and we have this one is Black Sea, and this is Caspian Sea, and you have Caucasus Mountains here, and then north of it is Russia, and yeah, this is a range Caucasus Mountains. Highest point is Mount Elbrus, and south of it is Georgia. Tbilisi is their capital, and you have Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. So this is Armenia, and this is Azerbaijan. So these are the modern nations, and below it is Iran. So this is the general area of the Khazars. This is where they lived in 8th century AD. They gave some additional details, but it's not relevant for our discussion today. So I have a picture of Caucasus Mountains. They're beautiful. They're so beautiful. These are Caucasus Mountains. From these Caucasus Mountains, we also get the word Caucasians. So these are eastern side of Turkey, northern side of Iran, and southern side of Russia. So they border Georgia and Russia today. I want to share some excerpts from this research material. First, establishment of the Khazars and Khazarian Empire. Here, let me read this. But equally, even more important, from both from point of view of Byzantine is again Eastern Roman Empire, diplomacy and of European history, is the fact that the Khazar armies effectively blocked the Arab avalanche in its most devastating early stages and thus prevented the Muslim conquest of Eastern Europe. Professor Dunlop of Columbia University, here again, the Western scholars documented this. She is Professor Dunlop of Columbia University, a leading authority on the history of Khazars, has given a concise summary of this decisive yet virtually unknown episode. So he's quoting from the research document of Professor Dunlop of Columbia University. Here, Professor Dunlop says very interesting things. The Khazar country lay across the natural line of the advance of Arabs. Within a few years of the death of Muhammad, that is 632 AD, the armies of Caliphate, sweeping northward through the wreckage of the two empires and carrying all before them, reached the great mountain barrier of Caucasus. So they coming from south, they reached the mountain barrier Caucasus or Caucasus Mountains. This barrier, once passed, the road lay open to the lands of Eastern Europe. So this is a way or a gateway to Eastern Europe, these mountains. And it was on the line of the Caucasus the Arabs met the forces of an organized military power, which effectively prevented them from extending their conquests in this direction. The wars of the Arabs and the Khazars, which lasted more than 100 years, though little known, have thus considerable historical importance. The victorious Muslims were met and held by forces of the Khazar kingdom. It can scarcely be doubted that but for the existence of Khazars, the region of the Caucasus, Byzantium, and the bulwark of European civilization in the east would have found itself outflanked by Arabs, and the history of Christendom and Islam might well have been a very different from what we know. So, what the Professor Dunlop is saying is almost he's hinting the hand of God. Christianity could have been wiped out if the Arabs were successful in transforming Europe, because the Americas were not yet there in these 8th to 10th centuries. So Arabs were put on hold at Caucasus Mountains, and they were prevented from reaching to Eastern Europe and whole of Europe, so that Christianity can flourish in Europe and later it can come to America. These are very interesting historical facts. So I picked up very few excerpts to give us the highlight of the story, and I have here encyclopedia. Thus, in 1973 edition of the Encyclopedia Judaica, the article Khazars is signed by Dunlop, again, same Professor Dunlop. His research material ended in Encyclopedia Judaica. And so he's quoting from those official documents. These are verifiable documents. How important in quantitative terms is that the presence of the Caucasian sons of Japheth? Remember, they are children of Japheth. In the end, son of Gomer. Gomer is son of Japheth, and Ashkenaz is son of Gomer. So they are sons of Japheth in the tents of Shem. Now they ended up in the tents of Shem. One of the most radical propounders of the hypothesis concerning the Khazars' origins of the Jewry is the professor of medieval Jewish history of Tel Aviv University, A.N. Polyak, in his book Khazaria. So the Jewish professors also wrote about this, that they are Khazars. Was published in 1944 in Tel Aviv and a second edition in 1951. In his introduction, he writes that the facts demand a new approach, both to the problem of relations between Khazar Jewry and other Jewish communities, and to the question of how far we can go in. Is talking about the difficulties in Israel, state of Israel, in Middle East, because majority of the Jews, about 90% of the Jews in Israel are believed to be Khazars. We will see it shortly. regarding this, continuing from the previous one, Jewry as the nucleus of the large Jewish settlement in Eastern Europe. So first they settled from Khazaria, they moved to Eastern Europe, the Khazars, because they were decimated, they were attacked by other more powerful forces uh, like Mongols. They came and decimated and they killed bunch of Khazars and others. They were taken as slaves and they ended up in Eastern Europe. The descendants of this settlement, those stayed where they were, those immigrated to United States and other countries, those who went to Israel constitute now the large majority of the world Jewry. So majority of the Jews today are Khazars. This was written before the full extent of the Holocaust was known, but that does not alter the fact that the large majority of surviving Jews in the world is of Eastern European and thus perhaps mainly of Khazars origin. So this is all research found. I just highlighted and took few things. And now, how they converted the whole Khazaria kingdom was converted to Judaism. A few excerpts. There has been no lack of efforts by either court to convert the Khazars to Christianity or Islam, but all they resulted in was exchange of diplomatic courtesies, dynastic intermarriages, shifting military alliances based on mutual self-interest. Relying on its military strength, the Khazar kingdom, with its hinterland of vassal tribes, was determined to preserve its position as the third force, leader of uncommitted nations of steppes. So they don't want to align with Christians or Islam. They wanted to be independent. And for political reasons, they adopted Judaism as their official religion. And again, the Bari, a person called Bari, his piece of research. There can be no question that the ruler was actuated by political motives in adopting Judaism. Not that he was convinced about the Judaism as a truthful religion, but there is a political advantage the king saw becoming embracing Judaism. That's what he's saying. To embrace Mohammedanism would have been would have made him the spiritual dependent of caliphs. 800 AD can. So if they embraced Mohammedism, would have been made him spiritual dependent on caliphs who attempted to press their faith on the Khazars, and in Christianity lay the danger of his becoming an ecclesiastical vassal of Roman Empire. So he would be absorbed by one of the two major players. So Judaism was a reputable religion with sacred books which both Christians and Mohammedans respected. It elevated him above the heathen barbarians and secured him against the interference of caliph or emperor. But he did not adopt, along with circumcision, the intolerance of Jewish cult. He allowed the mass of his people to abide in their heathendom and worship their idols. So king made a switch, and all the royalty and the top brass became Jews, adopting Judaism. Though the Khazar's court conversion was no doubt politically motivated, it would still be absurd to imagine that they embraced overnight, blindly, a religion whose tenets were unknown to them. So they took almost a generation, couple of generations, to become Jews. And then, if you go through this book, he goes through fascinating pieces of historical evidence that they will be chased and they will be scattered abroad, different countries. So they come as refugees and settle in Europe. They have Poland. Several pages are dealt with Poland and Bulgaria, and then Holland. and Hungary, all these European countries. Finally, they come to Germany and settle there. And then they come to France and they come to Spain and they come to England. They are all expelled from these countries initially between 8th century and 1900s. They went through lots of uh, rejection, lots of people die. And when there was a black plague in the ancient times, uh, people accused that these guys, the Jews, are responsible for spreading the plagues. So if they find a Jew, they would just kill them. So lots of them got decimated. They went through lots of hardship through the centuries, and their women were abducted and raped, and they begot children. And the invaders would just leave the woman and the children, and they were absorbed back into the community because Khazars respected and valued their woman. So it is very heterogeneous. There is no common racial stock. There is so much crossbreeding, either willingly or unwillingly, through invasions, through intermixture. But you have a specific warlike people under the umbrella of Judaism continued through different assaults, through different migratory routes in Europe. And finally, the bulk of them came to America. It's a very fascinating book. And Jews also agree that, and many of the Jews also want to suppress this material. So there is lots of controversies surrounding this, and some believe that the author of the book was assassinated or he was not found. And by the way, he is also a Jew. He was a Jew who wrote this book, who did this research. But he's very secular. He doesn't believe in Bible. He doesn't believe in Judaism. He doesn't believe in Islam either. He's just motivated to do this research. Race and myth. Now, Jews, as as they went through, like Jews are these Khazars, they are known for two things. They practiced usury. They rotate the money on the hefty interests, and they became wealthy. And their pattern is uh, they become friends with emperors, and they become custodians of royal treasury, all the money. And they're smart people, and they win favor with the kings and the royalty. And but the common people, the rest of the people, they would just put them to misery because raise they draw hefty interest on the money that they lend, and then eventually they take away their properties, their money, and put the people to misery. And because they are shrewd and smart with money, most emperors would put them in charge of the treasury as well as tax collecting. So they quickly rise to the power and prominence, and they're very important people in the empire. And this would this would grow and grow. They become very important, and then the whole nation would come together and hate them and get rid of them. So this book uses very nice, interesting pattern. Every country, they start with honeymoon, and then after a few years of honeymoon, they go through divorce, and there is a bloodshed. Everywhere they go is the same story. They see it in Germany, they see it in France, they saw it in Britain, they saw it in Spain. Because they get hold on money, they're smart, they're also a very crushing machine, and they work as very clannish. They are very close to one another because of this, all the history they have. uh, they work as very closed communities. They hardly intermarry with others, and they are very rich, and they are not interested in the immovable properties. They have gold and silver and the precious stones and whatever they can take with them, because they knew the pattern. They will be kicked out of the country in 50 years or 100 years. So when they were declared persona non grata, they will take all this movable wealth with them and move to another safer country. So they were driven from pillar to post, and they were hated, and they were killed, and they were persecuted, and they found the last haven in United States, and to some extent in Britain. Even though Britain refused them, kicked them out, they came back, and from United States and Britain, they were given a land by United Nations mandate to bifurcate Palestine into two different regions, and the Jews were allotted that land legally, and they came and started settling. And it's a just fascinating story. It goes through this book. Let me conclude this. The Jews of our times fall into two main divisions, Sephardim and Ashkenazim. So you have Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardic Jews. Sephardic Jews are from Spain. In Spain, almost 1,000 years, from long time, they are separate from Khazars. They are separate from Ashkenazi Jews. Sephardic Jews, we don't know how they came. They settled in Spain for more than 1,000 years. Probably they came from 70 AD after the Roman Empire decimated Judea, and they settled there. They have a different language and different culture. And they're small, a tiny percentage of the modern Israel, modern state Israel. Majority, bulk of them are Ashkenazi Khazarite Jews, according to this research document. Let me read this excerpt from this book. The Jews of our times fall into two main divisions, Sephardim and Ashkenazim. Sephardim are descendants of the Jews who, since antiquity, had lived in Spain. In Hebrew, Sepharad, until they were expelled at the end of 15th century and settled in countries bordering on Mediterranean, Balkans, and to lesser extent in Western Europe. They spoke a Spanish Hebrew dialect called Ladino and preserved their own traditions and religious rites. In 1960s, number of Sephardim were estimated to be 500,000. See, 500,000. It's a small, tiny people in 1960. Come to Ashkenazim. Ashkenazim or Ashkenazi Jews at the same period, around 1960s, numbered about 11 million. How much is 11 million and 500,000? Thus, in common parlance, Jew is practically synonymous with Ashkenazi Jew. But the term is misleading, for the Hebrew word Ashkenaz was in the medieval rabbinical literature applied to Germany, thus contributing. So there is some controversy. For the sake of piquantry, it should be mentioned that Ashkenaz of Bible refers to a people living somewhere in the vicinity of Mount Ararat and Armenia. The name occurs in Genesis 10. So he's a secular, doesn't believe in Bible, but he's quoting Bible. That Ashkenaz was mentioned in Genesis 10, chapter 10, verse 3, and 1 Corinthians 1, chapter 1, verse 6. Both of them I showed you as one of the sons of Gomer, who was son of Japheth. Ashkenaz is also a brother of Togarma and a nephew of Magog, whom the Khazars, according to King Joseph, claimed as their ancestor. But worse was to come, for Ashkenaz is also named in Jeremiah 51 and verse 27, where the prophet calls his people and their allies to raise and destroy Babylon. Call thee upon the kingdoms of Ararat, Minni, and Ashkenaz. So he's bringing them back to the Ashkenaz and Khazars. They are same people. He thinks that they are the present day Jews. But if the modern Israel, people in the modern Israel are from Khazaria, what happened to the people of Judah? The tribe of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi were the original peoples of the kingdom of Judah, southern Judah. What happened to them? That was another big question. There are several traits and thoughts, and they think some of the Jews in Israel are indeed uh, descendants of Judah. It's hard to define them, detect them, maybe 10% of them, and they're also scattered in Iran. Iran has considerable Jewish population. So in order to make a distinction between Khazars and original tribe of Judah, we use two different words. We use Judeans for tribe of Judah, and we use Jew for Khazars. That's how the two words uh, became known to differentiate between these two people. And some of the Afghanistan people are also suspected to be original Judeans. And because of the persecution and jizya taxes on them, they were forced to take up Islam. So probably some of the Islamic people of Afghanistan could be Judeans. Who knows what happened? So, but this is what this Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardic Jews, we keep hearing about them. Uh, so this is what the background is for the two things. And what if an Ashkenazi Jew from Khazar comes to you and want to know about Jesus Christ? What should be our response? What should be our response? Galatians 3, I want to close with this verse. For ye are all children of God by faith in Christ Jesus. For as many of you as have been baptized into Christ have put on Christ, Jesus Christ. There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither bond nor free, there is neither male nor female, for ye are all one in Christ Jesus. For if ye be Christ, then ye are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. It doesn't matter if you are a real Judean or if you are a Khazar Jew. It doesn't really matter for us. The true Zion, true Christians, we welcome them and embrace them if they want to come to truth, come to Jesus Christ, come to true gospel. We dearly love them and welcome them as our own brothers and sisters. We do the same welcome to Palestinians or any other people because we are moving away from flesh and we are moving into the spiritual truths of Jesus Christ and his Father. And we are no longer flesh people. We are spiritually minded and moving on to the realm of spirit. And we care less if somebody is Khazar or not. We all want them to come to the repentance and full acceptance of Jesus Christ and become true Zion, true Christians. This is where I think our response should be, and we should not be pulled into the controversies, hating Khazar Jews or embracing in the anti-Semitic or anti-Palestinian uh, movements. We should stay away from those movements. Uh, and that should come to the end of the presentation for today. I would like to hear your comments. Room is open for your. Yes, sir, Willard.
Yeah, I had my hand up earlier. I wanted and just as you introduced Arthur Kessler to the 13th tribe, I put my hand down because that's what I was going to comment on. But Kessler was he was a Russian Jew, but he was a communist. So, like you said, he was very secular, but he was a brilliant researcher and a great writer.
I see.
Uh, and I think that the 13th tribe was published. Now I'm trusting memory, this old memory, around 1980 or so, and uh, the, uh, it hadn't been out very long, and the Jews, I'm sure the Ashkenazis, uh, they said they were going to kill him, and he they wanted him to retract everything he said in the book, and I don't think he did, but he disappeared.
Correct. That's how I
You
understand.
know,
Yeah.
I remember because that was right after I had read the book, read it pretty close to when it came out. And it's an easy read. It's I looked over there. It's $10 on Amazon, and I would encourage everyone to. Oh, the man's a great writer. The book moves fast, and it's a fabulous history. And thank you very much for this.
You're welcome. Uh, I'm glad that you have read the book.
Oh yeah, I've had an interest in this kind of stuff for many years.
Yes, Marlene, go ahead, please.
Actually, it's Tom.
Oh,
The uh, the scripture where it says they're neither, where you kind of wrapped up, neither Jews nor Greeks. The way you explained it, and if I followed it, the Jews are all over the place anyhow. So it's like they're not. They're calling all the people, not just one nation, and it's pretty obvious. It gives it a lot broader perspective on what that particular scripture would normally be looked at. So thank you for the information.
you're most welcome, Tom. I'm glad that you gave a patient listening to this presentation. It's not quite in Jeremiah, but we stepped out of scriptures. But anything that we discussed today would not affect our prophecy interpretation. The prophecy understanding, insight would remain same if the modern day Israel has real Judeans or Jews from Caesarea. It wouldn't make any difference the way we approach the subject. I want to say upfront. Yes, Sandra.
Um, yes, I'm not 100% sure of my question, but toward the end, you referenced two types of Jews in modern day,
Yeah,
and I didn't get those two types down.
I can share that. Sephardic and
Oh, I
Ashkenazi.
got
Let me share that. Those
wait.
are Sephardic and Ashkenazi. So let me
Oh,
let me share my screen.
and those two names can be referenced to the Jews today in Israel.
Yes, yes.
Huh.
But some of them could be offended if you say that.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Minority.
Because they don't want to be identified as Khazars. They want to be identified as Judeans.
Could you spell that Karzars for me?
Yeah, yeah.
K.
I'm sharing this 1 second. I
Yeah.
closed my presentation. That's why I'm just opening this and share you.
Oh, okay.
They're not Judeans.
Are you seeing the screen?
I'm trying to get, oh, that's the book showing now.
Yeah. So you have Sephardic Jews, SHEPH or SEPHARD,
SHA.
E,
E.
SEPHARD, Sephardic Jews.
E.
Those are minority, a fraction, and majority would be Ashkenaz, ASHKEN, ASHKENAZ, Ashkenaz.
Okay. I'm trying to get back to the chat room and then mute myself also.
Okay. No problem. I'll just stop the presentation. Yes, sir, buddy.
You mentioned Spain. Well, I know my daughters did a little research on their lineage, and they went all the way back to the Iberian Peninsula, which actually is the Hebrew Peninsula. It's what they used to call it, the Hebrew Peninsula, and Iberia. So Iberian Peninsula. So a lot of Jewish people were there, and probably a mixed multitude of Israelites also, the other tribes. So if a person says, well, I'm Jewish because my parents came from the Iberian Peninsula or my grandparents, etc., doesn't mean a thing. Really, it doesn't mean a thing, because the Jewish people and the Levites and all of the tribes of Israel are scattered throughout the world. And there's hundreds of millions of them. It's not just one or two. It's hundreds of millions of Israelites scattered throughout the world. And God said, that the Levites and the Jews and the Israelites will be like the sand of the sea. Wow, that's a lot of people. They're scattered all over the place. So some people get into this thing of, well, I'm a Benjamite or I'm a whatever. That means nothing. It means really nothing, because God knows who his people are, wherever they are. So I don't think, I don't worry about it much. I don't know if I'm Jewish, Levite, or whatever, I just know that, and I hope I'm a Christian, a follower of Christ. So the race thing can get really out of hand very, very quickly.
Yep, you're right. Yeah, this material sometimes is used for anti-Semitic reasons, to put down Jews and tell them that you are the people who killed Christ. So you attack innocent people. They have nothing to do with that. Like, there are lots of Jews. They are very good people, nice people. I know them personally. Some of them are in the churches, COGs. There's one family in Phoenix, Arizona. Very nice family. And we shouldn't be assaulting them under anti-Semitism. But there are other things. When we come to realm of spirit, we have Zionism, political Zionism. That's a different beast. That's a different movement. So that we would address when we come to Mystery Babylon. Yes, Alan.
So if we go with a parallel kind of thing, a shadow and reality, would the Ashkenazi Jews destroy the end time Babylon? Are they going to be called by God as they were here in Jeremiah 51? Would they be summoned and gathered to destroy the end time Babylon? It's a fair question.
That's a good question, actually. But between shadow and spiritual reality, when you come from there to here, spiritual reality, sometimes they're not same people. like Egypt, physical Egypt, like when you come to spiritual Egypt, it could be referring to completely different set of people. Who knows? I mean, I want to leave that possibility of not being the same people. You're raising a possibility of being the same people. We have to make a case either way.
Yeah, one of the problems I see with a lot of written history concerning migration of peoples and displacement of peoples and the diaspora is when they try to calculate numbers. Like, for example, he calculated that there were 500,000
Yeah.
Sephardic Jews at one time in
Nice.
recent history. What happens in any culture, it's like saying how many Germans are in America. Well, Germans certainly did migrate here, but they got amalgamated in with other peoples. They
Yeah.
married the Swedes and they married the Dutch and the Brits. So is their offspring still German, or are they a mixture? Well, obviously they don't come from, the offspring are not really identifiable with one European nation. So I see the Jews that way also, that look, the Jews in the old ancient world had all kinds of captives that were amalgamated in. And throughout the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages and into the Renaissance, they were intermixing. So to say that there's Ashkenazi and Sephardic separated, how is that even possible when they've been intermarrying with each other? So I have a little bit of a hard time with anyone who would calculate a specific number or percentage, because after all, they've been intermarrying for centuries, the same way the Germans have. You see my point?
Yeah, you see, I see your point. What you said is very true for Ashkenazi. It's very hard to track Ashkenazi, except by their religion and their migratory routes. But Sephardic, it's easy because they're there, Liberia and Spain, for more than 1,000 years. They were not intermarrying. They were very kind of clannish, and they preserved their rich heritage. So it's easy to see them and count them. So there's still very, very few people, even in Israel today. You can identify them with their language, their culture, and their customs. And still they try to intermarry only among themselves, Sephardic Jews. And Ashkenazi is a different beast you are talking about. They still have those characteristics of very militant and some kind of that he talks more about them being cruel. And I always believed Muslims and Arabs were most cruel people on the earth, but they met with this level of cruelty. They were terrorized. So the only people who can stop cruel Muslims in the sense of invading Islamizers are Khazars. They are really, really dangerous people to mess with. So you have those characteristics still. Ashkenazi is no longer a racial stock. As Buddy said, there are lots of intermixture. If you go through this book, it's a fascinating research document. I think we should, if you have time, we should at least read it once, just to be aware of what these terms are, who are Ashkenazi. Because you keep hearing this on Christian forums and Christian conversations. Oh, they're Ashkenazi. You don't necessarily agree with what book says. At least it gives you a background, what they mean when they say Ashkenazi. Or when you say Ashkenazi, they are infuriated. People from Israel. Why they are infuriated? So you know the background. So they don't want to be associated as somebody non-Judeans. They want to be identified as the true descendants of Abraham, and obviously they want to claim to be true chosen people. That's what they want to claim. But if you bring these things, then everything is questioned. So they get infuriated. So we use caution when we use these terms, I think. But you are right. You can question the statistics.
Yeah, and if it's true that the Ashkenazi were not careful who they mixed with, but they mixed with all kinds, then their true identity has also been completely diluted by the nations that they mixed with. So they aren't really Ashkenazi as they were 1,500 years ago.
No,
They
that's
can't
what,
be
yeah,
because they've intermingled with so many nations that even to say that there is such a thing as an Ashkenazi is an inaccurate statement because they've intermingled for so many hundreds and hundreds of years.
that's he exactly addresses that issue in the book. He makes the rape as a biggest cause because all the invaders would rape their woman, and after they beget the children, invaders would just leave mercilessly. They move on. But the Khazars would collect the woman back along with the children, and then they valued and loved their. So they come up with lots of intermixture, And Khazar Jews, there are some people just look like Germans. They just look like French. They just look like American Anglo-Saxons. You have so much alike. Like it started with Genghis Khan, who killed bunch of them, and then also his soldiers impregnated this Khazarian woman. So you have Genghis Khan like people also. Now it's impossibility to go with racial approach to them. You're very right, but not the story for with Sephardic is not like that. Sephardic is are so secluded and developed as a separate, isolated clan. So it's easy to know them, uh, to count them. It's possible, and but you can always question if it is exactly 50,000 or so. That's debatable. You're right. Yes, Willard.
The thought just occurred to me. The Khazars were such vicious, fierce fighters.
Mhm.
Look at the IDF today. They're
What is?
pretty. They it's about the toughest army in the world. Just a thought.
You're right. If you take Mossad, the spy agency, that's rated number one in the world. Number one bankers are Jews. Again, money, the government money, king's money, again, Jews. And you have so many things like that. It started with Khazars. You can trace them, like especially Mossad. If they don't, if once they get the enemy into their territory, into their hands, into their custody, uh, the cruelty that they show. I heard this. I am not a witness to this. They progressively chop down the fingers every 10 minutes or so. If you don't tell, if you don't open the mouth, so if you fall into the hands of them, there is no escape. So sometimes CIA and FBI are not able to extract information But if they fall into Mossad, there is no way out. They immediately get things out of the people. That's the reputation or the bad reputation that the agency earned. So you can trace back some of these characteristics from Khazaria, but you can dismiss the whole story and question the whole story. You are also at, because this is not scripture. We are not in scripture. We are into secular research. So you take it as with grain of salt. Yes, buddy.
There is one individual that knows who's who. And you look at Ezekiel 37, verse 11, and you see these bones that are raised up are the whole house of Israel, plus the people that will be in charge of the temple, the new temple after Christ returns, are the descendants of Zadok. So God knows who all these people are. And for people to, try to figure out who's who is kind of a waste of time, because God knows who people are. He knows where that bloodline goes and where those genes are, and he knows all of that. But a lot of people get really beside themselves trying to find out if they're of a certain tribe. Like they might think they're the tribe of Benjamin. It really doesn't matter, because God knows who his people are and who the people, the covenant people are. He'll divide that out eventually after Christ returns. But there is plenty of proof of who's who in the scriptures. But it really doesn't matter, because God knows who people are. So anyway, to me, it's kind of laughable when people try to say, well, I'm of this tribe or I'm of that tribe. Who knows? Who knows? We're so many generations past Israel. Who knows who is what? They do these genetic traces. Now, you say my daughter did that, and it went all the way back to the Iberian Peninsula on her mother's side. She didn't do mine, so wouldn't make any difference anyway. So anyway.
Thank you, buddy.